Bienvenue, benvenuti, and welcome to Expatriotical, the podcast for expats, travelers, and other adventurous souls. I'm Chandra Alley, and after living as an expat with my husband and 4 children in 2 different countries for 6 years, I've learned the arts of pivoting during pitfalls, traveling tastefully for less, and soaking in amazing new cultures without losing your own. Join me as we dive into the joys and challenges of travel and the expat life in every episode. Hey everybody, I am super duper excited for this episode, and I have to credit the idea of it to my mom because she had made a statement or asked a question or something like that concerning how many expats there are in the world, because she had viewed it from a lens or perception that there weren't very many of us, expats that is. So that made me look into how many expats there are around the world, and I'm going to share some of that amazing information with you in this episode. But the other reason that I'm so excited about this episode is because normally pretty much 99% of everything that you hear on Expatriotical, unless it's an interview episode, is scripted. I may interrupt myself while reading and say something about what I've already written, but I write it out and I read it with as much enthusiasm and inflection as possible. In fact, what I'm saying right now is written, but in a minute, I'm going to jump ship and kind of discover all of this information with you. It's going to be almost like a mock live episode because I'm going to relay the information and be just as shocked or elated or whatever as you are in the moment. This may be a great idea or it may be a flop. We don't know yet, but I think it'll be really fun to do it together. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is going to come from Wikipedia. And of course, we know that's an extremely trusted source. Please hear the sarcasm. But I just wanted to use it as a point of reference because it gives me, I think, one of the most recent totals, even though it's like information that's 11 years old. But in 2013, the United Nations, this is according to Wikipedia, estimated that 232 million people, or 3.2% of the world's population at that time, lived outside of their home country, which is extremely interesting. Now I'm going to switch to another site, which is called Youth's International Lounge. And this is basically a woman that has started this lounge, and I'll read it directly from her website. She says, "Hi, I'm Youth. I'm the owner of this international lounge." And if you go down further, she says she created the lounge, which is a place for you to find support and advice no matter your background, culture, or language. And so I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into her website just to kind of understand where she gets her credibility. And she has degrees and work experience in academia, and she has a master's, and it says LIC Phil, I'm not sure what that means, in Italian and French literature and linguistics at the University of Zurich, and a PhD in Romance philology, 9 years of graduate research, and she was a lecturer and assistant professor at the Department of Romance Languages and Literatures at the University of Zurich, and she has collaborated on multiple projects in Italy and Switzerland and in the Netherlands. So she has a pretty good background for being able to speak about some of these matters. So going back to really one of the things that caught my eye, she has a table of contents in her at the beginning of her website, and it just kind of gives some statistics. So I'm going to share them with you. First of all, she says that since 1960, the number of expats has triplicated. I didn't even know that was a word. In 1960, there were only in quotes, 73 million expats worldwide. And today there are 230 million. And again, I'm not exactly sure what date she's going off of because I'm not seeing a publication to this date to this article, but I think this comes from 2016. That was the most recent comment that I see. But going back up to the information, if all expats in the world were to form an imaginary country, it would be the 5th most populous country in the world, and its population would be greater than the ones of Russia, Germany, and Brazil. That's pretty incredible, especially because, as we know, Russia has a ginormous landmass. A lot of that is not populated, but nonetheless, it's really interesting. If all of the expats would form a human chain, it would circle the earth once, and it would be 40,000 kilometers long. Women make up 49% of the expat population worldwide, nearly 113 million, which is more than the population of Canada and the UK put together. So ladies, we're a pretty big percent. Obviously, the other 51% is men, but it's a really big demographic. And I know that a lot of the subjects that we talk about here on Expatriotical speaks to that 49% of people. The top recipient countries of expat remittances are India, China, Mexico, Philippines, and Nigeria. And we are actually going to talk about a few of those countries a little bit later on, just from the stuff that I skimmed, but I haven't really dove into yet. The top 5 countries with the highest share of expats in total population are Qatar, UAE, Kuwait, Jordan, and Singapore. There are 6.32 million American and 4.7 million British expats living abroad. And it would be great if there was a more detailed list about this, but it says that she couldn't find it, from my understanding. And at the time that she published this, I would say, it says in the time that you take to read this, 6 to 7 expats would have moved abroad for the first time. That's really interesting information. I really like hearing how many people there are worldwide and the demographic of a large portion of that of those people are obviously they're women. Moving on to the next site, which comes from Internations, internations.org, which is, trying to find this. It's the largest global community for people who live and work abroad. So basically, they've got a lot of connections that you make. You can sign up. I'm not sure. I've done a little bit of digging, but again, I wanted this to be fresh. And so a lot of this stuff I am reading for the first time, but basically there are 420 cities worldwide that are represented. I'm just kind of scrolling through this. There are 5.4 million members around the world, and they have events and activities. There's obviously online things, but there are things in person. So this is super interesting. You can go to www.internations.org to learn more, but we are going to jump in to what caught my eye with them, and that happened to be country rankings and reports. I found this super interesting because now we're going to break down some of the countries, and this is actually fresh information. So they polled, let's see if it'll say 12, it's somewhere around 12,500 expats, and this is for 2024. So, I mean, what are we, 10 months into 2024? And there we go. Here it is. In early 2024, more than 12,500 expats from around the world shared with us their thoughts on what it's like to live and work abroad. They represented 175 nationalities living in 174 countries or territories. So some of the things that they have listed are best and worst places for expats. We are totally jumping into that. Quality of life index. Also, we will be getting into that. Ease of settling in, working abroad index, personal finance, expat essentials, survey demographics, which I think is also interesting, and we should touch on that, and then methodology. So jumping into the best and worst places for expats to move to. So of course, this is just from a poll taken. This is not my personal opinion expressed here. I'm reading this directly from the poll that they have given. So it says the top 10 destinations in 2024 are Panama, Mexico, Indonesia, which was also reflected in some other things I read. Mexico was reflected in Utes research and publishing. Spain, Colombia, Thailand, Brazil, Vietnam, the Philippines, and the UAE. In the bottom are the UK, Ireland, Malta, Italy, Norway, Canada, Germany, Finland, Turkey, and Kuwait. Very interesting. A lot of this is really interesting and very surprising. And I think that we could probably jump into, they give multiple descriptions as to why. They talk about Panama being great because it's ranked fourth in personal finance. So it really talks about maybe the quality, obviously the quality of life and your dollar going farther. Let's jump back in and go to quality of life and see the rankings there. For the quality of life index, they say, and this is, this gets broken down into quality of life, leisure options, travel and transit, healthcare, and safety and security, and environment and climate. Let's kind of touch on the overall, and then I'll give you the number one or number two for those other things. So the overall quality of life index ranked at number one is Spain. Second is Austria. Number three is the UAE. So if you don't know what that is, that's the United Arab Emirates, and that's going to be, I believe, Qatar, Abu Dhabi is under there, I believe. So those are, or excuse me, not Qatar, Dubai, Abu Dhabi is ranked under there. I said Qatar because Qatar is number 4 on this list. Luxembourg is number 5, Japan, Portugal, Denmark, Singapore, and South Korea. Now, when it talks about leisure options, number 1 is Spain. Number 2 is Mexico, and I'll give you all the way to number 4. We'll go Hong Kong is number 3, and number 4 is the UAE. For travel and transit, Singapore is number 1, Austria is number 2, number 3 is Qatar, and number 4 is South Korea. For healthcare, this is interesting and exciting. South Korea is number 1. Number 2 is Qatar. Spain is ranked as number 3, and Japan is at number 4. And I am happy to say that France, I'm skipping down to the bottom, is ranked at number 10. That's good for me. Safety and security. This is also interesting, and I've been here before, and so I love seeing this. Safety and security, Denmark is ranked number 1. Number 2 is Luxembourg. Switzerland is number 3. The UAE is number 4. For environment and climate, this is really great. Number 1 is Costa Rica. Number 2, this comes as no surprise to me, is Switzerland. It's beautiful there. Number 3 is Austria, and number 4 is New Zealand. And we can jump back into the overall scheme of things. I'm really interested in the ease of settling in because I think that my second assignment, or our second assignment here in France, has been so much easier than our first assignment in Italy. And that could be because we'd already done it once and not everything was so new to us. But there could be other reasons beyond that. So out of 53 countries, the number 1 country for ease of settling in is Costa Rica. Number 2 is Mexico. Number 3 is the Philippines. Number 4 is Indonesia. Number 5 is Brazil. 6 is Thailand, 7 is Panama, 8 is Colombia, 9 is Kenya, and 10 is Greece. Oh, I really like that we got some other countries kind of thrown into the mix. Within that whole idea, there are subcategories of culture and welcome, local friendliness, and finding friends. Ooh, okay, we're going to go through all 10 of those on finding friends. But in culture and welcome, Costa Rica takes number 1 again, and Mexico takes number 2 again. That's great. And the Philippines takes number 3 again, and Indonesia is at number 4. It's not completely an exact mirror of the whole overall scale, but it's really close. Local friendliness, Costa Rica, again, is at number 1. Indonesia is at number 2. Brazil is at number 3, and the Philippines is at number 4. In finding friends, we're going to read all of them. Mexico is number 1. Philippines is number 2. Panama is number 3. Number 4 is Indonesia. Number 5 is Costa Rica. Number 6 is Brazil. 7, Kenya. 8th is Thailand, 9th is Greece, and 10th is Spain. This is really interesting to me because I definitely believe that there is a difference between it being a friendly culture and finding friends. And I've experienced that, I would say, even moving around stateside in America for me. Texas is a super friendly culture, very, very friendly. You know, your neighbors bring you baked goods and it's wonderful, but it was really challenging for me to find friends. So it's really nice to kind of have that information out there. And for me, it kind of broadens my scope of like, okay, well, what else could we look at if we were offered the opportunity? Finally, we will go to the survey demographics, because this is also very interesting to know what they were looking at. The gender split in this survey was 48% female, 52% male, and 0.3% preferred to self-describe, whatever that means. Relationship status, 56% of people that took the survey were in a relationship and 44% were single. Family status, 21% of them had dependent children abroad, and 79 were without dependent children abroad. So to me, if you relate that to the friendship, that's very interesting, because I find that being abroad, a lot of times school, especially here in France, the school has been a great place to dig in and find friends. The age groups. So obviously, this is a survey for adults. So 5% were age 25 and below, and 9% were 26 to 30. 13% was 31 to 35. 14% was 36 to 40. 13% were 41-year-olds to 45, and then 11% were 46 to 50. 51 to 55, ages 51 to 55 took up 9%. And actually, sorry, we'll go one more. We're almost there. At 8% of this demographic, or of the whole poll, were 56 to 60-year-olds. And the largest percentage were actually 61-year-olds and above. So again, just thinking about the places we are in life and how that changes how we look at it, I find that really interesting. And sometimes it makes me think, are some of these expats what we called the adventure expats, and they may have chosen to be part-time expats. So they are part-time living in Mexico, part-time somewhere else. Who knows? And then finally, the last thing that they have in the demographics section was level of education. 83% of the people polled had a university degree. There were 2% that had no degree at all. 8% had were high school graduates. 7% had commercial, technical, or vocational training. And then we had 34% with a bachelor's degree or similar, 42% with post-grad work, and then 7% with a PhD work. This is all super duper fascinating. I'm going to quickly check out the methodology and trying to see if there's anything that I could read quickly. Not really, unfortunately. So that kind of rounds everything up, but I would really love to hear your thoughts. If you want to DM me on Instagram, or send or comment on Spotify. I'll be mentioning that more later, but I really love to hear what you have to think of the studies that we talked about, because to me, it's super fascinating. Okay, now we will jump back into your regular programming with this episode's Shan Select. This part is being read, by the way. I have to pre-write this because this is a more international episode, which is kind of a fun thing to say because a funny thing to say, because this is a podcast for expats and travelers, but I wanted to share something that is accessible to more than just people visiting the Paris area. And that is a company called Utopia. This weekend, my family and I had the pleasure of going to one of their campgrounds, which is called City Camping with a K, that is just outside of Paris in the Bois de Boulogne alongside of the Seine River. We went there for our church's annual retreat and stayed in a lovely cabin, nestled among the trees, not only with other cabins, but also near spots for our RVs and tent campers. There were these quaint little huts, if you will. They were clean, modern, and really cozy. Also on the campsite was a restaurant, a playground, bike rentals, a game area, and a store. And I have to mention the store in particular because a lot of times you go to places like this and the store really hikes up the prices, but that was not the case. And that's something that I can really appreciate because I think that offers value, especially when some people may be camping or staying on a budget. And speaking of budget, the price was very affordable. If you go to Hutopia.com, that's Huttopia.com, you will find that they have locations all over Europe and also in the United States and Canada. So you can check that out for yourself. I obviously haven't been to any other locations, but after my experience at city camping and also after looking at the website, I will definitely keep Hutopia in the back of my mind whenever I'm searching for accommodations when we travel. I will be sure to leave the website in the show notes, and as usual, I am not an affiliate, just simply a fan. And finally, for our quote of the day, I stumbled upon this one a day or so ago, but honestly, it seems almost to be like a thread that has been woven into my life for quite some time. And I think it really ties into today's episode of being an expat. The quote comes from Nelson Mandela. He says, "There is nothing like returning to a place that remains unchanged to find the ways in which you yourself have altered." And I believe that is so true among the lives of expats. I know that I'm certainly not the same as I was over 6 years ago before I moved from Texas to Italy. And I'm assuming that as you listen to this, if you are an expat, you are finding that you are not the same either. And hopefully that is in the absolute best ways possible. I hope you've enjoyed this new type of episode today. I would really love to hear what you have to say about it. So if you follow me on Instagram, my handle is @Expatriotical. Whenever you hear this, would you please comment on this post for this episode? I would really love to get some feedback because that would allow for more episodes like this in the future. And for those that don't have an Instagram account, you can also comment by going to Spotify. As I have mentioned in a previous episode, Spotify now allows you to comment on the episodes. So let me know what you think. Thank you so much, and I can't wait to meet you back here again next week. Until then, this is Chandra Alley reminding you to live and travel in the know with Expatriotical.